Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Sydney, Australia today. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, I am Meagan O'Nan. I am based in Starkville, Mississippi, way down in the deep south of the United States. I was born in Henderson, Kentucky in 1981. My parents at the time were Methodist and then eventually converted to Catholicism. I have an older brother and a younger brother, so I'm the middle child of two boys. And when I was about 7 or 8 years old, my family decided to move us to Mississippi. My dad was an entrepreneur at the time and was looking for an opportunity. And he had an older brother here in Mississippi that found an opportunity for him. And so they moved us here all the way to Mississippi. And it was a huge, huge change for me, being a very introverted child and a very deep child. I really missed the connection of being with our extended family and having that safety and security near. And so when we moved here, I was in 3rd grade and really struggled with the transition. And at the time we moved to a new church, which was Catholic. And then I spent a lot of my childhood all the way up to my high school years really struggling with the Catholic mindset and women not being allowed to be priests in the church. I struggled with deep spiritual questions that really didn't get answered by my parents because they just didn't know what to say. I was that child that would wake my mom up in the middle of the night and ask her about eternity and what happens if eternity ends. And she never really had answers for me, but what my mom did do for me was she would hold me until my fear passed. And so I have this really rich memory of being held by her and her holding me, being that representation of God that I really needed, that I didn't feel like I was getting from church. I felt like church was I was being taught a lot about fear and sin and not joy and love. And so it was just a really interesting childhood of being who I am and questioning everything and not getting answers and not having those resources available to me. Neither one of my brothers were really like me. They were involved with their friends and sports and very social. I was very introverted in my room, journaling, reading, questioning things, wanting answers, not getting those answers. Eventually, when I went to college, I went on sports scholarships. I played basketball and softball at a major U.S. college, Mississippi State University. And at the time, I was dating boys and men and had boyfriends all through high school and college, and realized at the end of my college career that I was gay. And I hid it for a really long time. And there came a point when an ex-boyfriend was really upset by this news and he decided to out me. So I was outed to my Christian community that I was a part of at the time, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I was outed to all of the other athletes on campus and all of the people and professors and everyone who was in my life. I was outed. And in one day, I was basically people came down on me and told me I was disgusting, told me that I was a sinner, told me that I was going to hell. And it forced me to then go tell my family, because I knew that word was going to travel fast. I was going to college in the same town that I grew up in, and it wasn't going to take long for things to come back around to my family. And this was in 2004. And at the time here in Mississippi, it was certainly not okay to be gay. And even today, there are a lot of times where it's still not okay to be gay, and it's come a long way. But now that we're living in very different times in the U.S., it's created new challenges, challenges that feel very familiar. But at the time, it certainly wasn't okay. So my mom really struggled emotionally. My dad asked me if I was going to go to hell. And my older brother, he told me that I should leave Mississippi, that I'll be safer somewhere else. And so that's what I did. I decided a year later, after not having any support from anyone, that I needed to leave. I needed to get out of the environment I was in, the culture I was in, and try to find a way through building my confidence and finding some sort of sense of self-worth. And so that's what I did. I ended up going to college at Florida, getting a master's at Florida State, working in Miami for a while, and eventually moving to Colorado, where I settled for a bit and found so many different ways of thinking, different spiritualities, things that really helped me develop confidence and self-worth. I found community. I found great friends. I felt I was being reflected back what I was giving. And eventually in 2010, I thought it was time. I felt ready to come back to Mississippi. I realized that I needed to heal the wounds. I needed to have those hard conversations with my family and my community. I needed to face my fears. And I felt like the only way for me to do that, which isn't true for everyone, but for me, I needed to come back home and I needed to face myself. And so that's what I did. At the time, I was dating my wife. We've been together 17 years. We've been married for 11 years now. She decided to make the trip to Mississippi with me, having never been in the South. She was actually born in Africa, grew up in California, and has had a very multicultural life, but had not been in the South. So it was a very different experience for her. But once we got here, it was a lot harder than I imagined it would be. The confidence that I thought I had certainly was not the confidence I had when I got here. It was very alarming to feel not comfortable in my skin when I had gotten to a point where I felt very comfortable in my skin. And so for the last 15 years, I have been working on sharing my story locally. We are still in Mississippi, my wife and I. We have a 6-year-old daughter, lots of pets. We live on 7 beautiful acres. And we have been on a journey. I've been sharing my story, written 3 books, and I have been trying to help bridge the gap of relationship with my family, which has gone really well. My parents are our best friends. My wife's mom lives with us. And I've had many conversations in the community with churches, priests, preachers, different organizations. I've been on the news. I've been at the forefront of LGBTQ rights and being a voice that really shares from a place of vulnerability and storytelling and not blame and not pointing the finger back. And so that work has been very intense, and I've had to look at myself and work through my own things and be willing to have some hard looks in the mirror and be willing to have these really hard conversations with people who once really scared me and who created a lot of trauma from me. But in the end, what I have found in facing all of this head on is healing, is a sense of self that's peaceful and joyful.
Wow, what a journey you have been on. Absolutely incredible, but inspiring at the same time, despite all of the hardships that you've encountered. And I just love the fact that you are using storytelling in such a powerful way. You know, in Zimbabwe, we have a belief that the minute you tell your story to another human being, the problem is halved. Now that you have shared your story with our community, we all carry it with you. And your work is needed so much here in the United States with everything that is going on. So, can you take us back to a moment when you knew that you needed to share your story publicly? What initiated that?
Originally, I had written a book in 2008 called Creating Your Heaven on Earth, but I wasn't yet back in Mississippi. I was still living in Colorado. So I've always had this sense of my calling being sharing my story as being a writer and a speaker. So that's always something I wanted to do as a child. I never imagined it would play out the way it has. But after moving back to Mississippi, it took me a few years to really ground myself and get into a space where I felt like, okay, I'm ready for this. And so I would say about 2012, I really, I started a blog. That's how it started. It was just my writing, posting things on Facebook, started sharing that way. It started getting a lot of attention because at the time it was not popular to talk about being gay here in Mississippi, and all of my friends were too scared to do it. So I was like, well, I feel like this is my calling. This is what I'm meant to do. And so it was really 2012 where I started sharing my story openly, even after being a published author. And it has just spiraled and been what I have done for the last 13, 14 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. And these stories carry a life of their own. So you went on to write your memoir, Held and Free. Why did you choose that title, and what can people expect when they read your book?
Well, I did write a book in 2014 called Courage, Agreeing to Disagree is Not Enough. And it was kind of like a snippet of my story. I was like giving people a taste. But Held and Free, I released it in 23. And I, at that point, was very comfortable in my skin and my story, and have a daughter at this point, and married and established and very grounded in my way of life. And I did not hold back on any details of my story. I was very raw. It was the most vulnerable writing that I have done in my career, and I didn't leave any stone unturned. So Held and Free to me means being held. It's a more of a spiritual meaning than anything. It's just like knowing that I'm very held by something and believing that, and have carried that throughout my life. I know I'm held, but I also know that I have the freedom to choose. I have the freedom to choose my mindset, my perspective, who I surround myself by, how I see things, how positive I am, and how I share my story and how I interact with other people. So it has a very deep meaning for me. That's how I try to live.
That's just beautiful. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced coming out of the Deep South?
I would say the biggest challenges, just being misunderstood. I remember sitting in the chapel of memories at Mississippi State's campus with a mentor of mine who was a preacher, a Baptist preacher, and him sitting with me and reading Bible verses to me about that I was going to go to hell if I continued to participate in homosexual lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I remember that moment where I realized I was just a label. I was no longer a person. who I had been as an athlete, as a person in the community, as a leader, was washed away. And I knew it was that moment where I realized I had nothing and no one to walk me through how to become myself and how to get to a sense of self-worth again. And so that challenge, that moment, it's been 20 years since that moment, has been the biggest challenge for me, is realizing that people really see me as just a gay woman most of the time until they get to know me, and then they say, oh wow, you're really nice, and like, you're very spiritual, and there's so much more to you. And so that's the biggest hurdle, is just letting people get to know me, which is why storytelling has been so important, to let people into who I am beyond the label that they perceive as something not good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that until people actually stop and just get to know someone, they find that you are more similar than we are different, right?
Absolutely.
It's all of these preconceived notions and perceptions about people who we consider to be different.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So, how has your journey shaped your approach to DEI work, especially now in the United States with the current government that's in office, everything that's happening around DEI?
Oh, it has been a challenge. It has been
It's now a dirty word, right?
roller coaster. Yeah, it's been a roller coaster. My work has remained the same, but also changed, because you have to change. I've had to adjust language, and so many things have become so much more challenging. There's so many more hoops to jump through, but the essence of what I do is remain the same. Is I help, kind of like what you just talked about. I help people find common ground. I help them relate to each other through their fears. I help them relate to each other through their values. I do not help them relate to each other through their beliefs, because I believe that beliefs can change, and I believe values don't. And if we can relate on a place of our values and our fears, then we can see each other as human beings wanting and fearing the same things. And so that's the work I do, is helping people open those doors, open their hearts to the idea that, hey, maybe there's more to that person than I originally thought. And so that's essentially what my work has done. It's come in many different forms and fashions. But at the end of the day, that's what I do, no matter what I'm doing.
I love it. So, why do you believe storytelling is such a powerful tool for fostering connection?
I read a study recently that the most powerful way for someone to emotionally connect with another person and like see beyond their labels is through authenticity. And I believe storytelling provides an opportunity for people to just be real and authentic. And it gives the other person who is listening the chance to get outside of their own head and their own world and open their heart. So it has done wonders for me. I know that when I've approached hard conversations with people who want to see me as a label, whether it's on a news show or on a podcast, or a conversation one-on-one with a priest in my office, it doesn't matter. Storytelling is the thing. Telling my story from a vulnerable place and asking them about theirs is the thing that binds us.
Yeah, that's pretty magical. That is just beautiful. So, what does it mean to you to be both held and free in your identity?
To me, being held is a part of my path that actually creates freedom. Self-care and spending time in my spiritual walk, whatever that is, meditating, taking care of myself, making sure I'm taking care of myself in a way where I do feel held. And it's, even today I was really struggling, and I was like, you know what? I don't need to struggle. Just stop and meditate for an hour and come back to center. And so that's what I did. It's like I've gotten to this point where I'm not going to choose to struggle, which I think is a big deal, a really big deal. but being held to me is that daily walk of connecting with myself and listening to spirit, whatever you want to call it, and my higher self, and giving my chance that freedom to just be okay with the unknown, right? And then freedom, I think, just comes hand in hand with that, where we've gotten to a point where we let go and we're able to freely choose our perspectives and our perceptions of how we're interacting with the world.
And what's really powerful about what you've just said is that we get to make the choice. We get to choose where we want to position ourselves. And a lot of times people don't realize that they have that choice.
I totally agree. And sometimes I don't realize it. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I do have a choice. Let's do something about it, and it's just years of practice and really having to remind myself. And my wife is always reminding me to, hey, Megan, go take some quiet time. You need a minute.
I love it. So how can leaders foster more empathy and authenticity within their organizations, do you think?
Storytelling is a great place to start. I've worked with many organizations where they do connection circles or human connection dinners, or there's so many ways that you can set aside time for your employees to connect and share their stories.
Yes.
I don't think there's anything better than just sitting down, breaking bread, and sharing each other's stories and giving actual time and space for that to happen. I usually think they're too busy, but having that moment or moments, or a consistent time frame where employees can sit down and just be with each other, it's magical.
Yeah.
It makes the biggest difference. It builds trust. It builds empathy. It builds the opportunity for people to work together better. So it's simple. It's a simple modality and a simple method, but it's often very hard for people to actually integrate.
In Zimbabwe, we have a proverb, and I'll see if I can literally translate it. The proverb is ukama igasha rinosungwa nechikafu, which means relationships and friendship is like the threads of a piece of fabric, and they are bound together with the breaking of bread. So we believe that until you've had a meal with someone, you're not really a friend.
I love that.
So using food to connect people and start conversations, I love that. That's exactly what you're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what are the most common blocks that people face when it comes to vulnerability?
When it's in relationship with other people, I think what blocks people is this need to change the other person, needing this person to be something specific, or having expectations around who they want them to be.
Yes.
And that blocks vulnerability. That blocks your ability to open your own heart. It creates defensiveness. It creates just a lack of opportunity for the other person to share openly too. So I'm guilty of it as well. We're all human beings. We all have our moments, but that's the biggest thing, is going into a conversation or a relationship wanting something specific from another person instead of just letting them be who they are.
Oh, man. So how can we build bridges in an era of polarization, especially right now in the US? It's impacting the rest of the world as well.
I'm sure. The way I do it is I keep having the hard conversations. My parents voted differently than I did. And while we've built an amazing relationship throughout the years, we've had to really work through this one and have hard conversations about why and where I'm coming from and where they're coming from, and getting to a point of understanding. the biggest thing we can do to build bridges is to not give up, to
Yeah.
have those hard conversations with
Mhm.
those that we love, that we don't want to have, because that is
Yeah.
the only thing that's going to shift the tide, is coming to a place of understanding with one another, right or wrong. Um, and it's not an easy thing to do, but we have to have that courage and that bravery and be willing to be open and have those conversations with people who see the world differently than we do.
Yeah, it's not easy though. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
And a lot of people would rather avoid it than, face it head on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
There's so much work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Now, what advice would you give someone who's struggling to embrace their authentic self? A lot of people live in the shadows, fear of rejection from family, from friends. What advice would you give?
To find your people, find a community where you feel like you can be yourself. I think
Yes.
that is the best way to build a little bit of confidence and a little bit of hope. And that's always the best place to start, is just find your people, find the people where you feel free, where you feel softened, where you feel like you don't have to have your defenses up. Everybody needs that in their life. And it's a great place to start.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is to find some kind of practice that allows you to listen and be okay with whatever's going to come at you, whether it's meditating or journaling or doing yoga or working out, or it doesn't matter. Some routine, some sense of practice, I think, for me, has provided so much safety within myself.
Mhm.
Um, I think those are the two most important aspects of really giving yourself a chance to build confidence and start realizing what is authentic for you.
Now I'm going to end our interview with a bit of a thought experiment. And the first question, I'm going to teleport you back to the younger you, that young woman who was discovering who she is, struggling with her identity, not knowing how to express it and make people around her understand.
Mhm.
If we could teleport back to the younger you and you could sit with her and give her 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
Mm. Whew, that's a big question. One is everything's going to be okay. The second is this too shall pass. And the third is don't give up.
Absolutely beautiful. Giving up is not an option. All right. So, the last question, I'm going to teleport you into the future this time. And we are going to go and meet the 90-year-old you. And she's sitting in her rocking chair, surrounded by her children, her dogs, her cats, her grandchildren, whoever's with you at the end. If we could go into the future to meet this wise woman who has led you up until this point,
Mm.
what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
This takes me back to a moment I had with my grandmother, who passed recently, and I was with her when she died. And what she said to me is also relevant for this question. She's the last thing she said to me is, "You're special."
That is absolutely beautiful. The other reason why I love asking women that question is a lot of women don't realize that the wise woman is already in us.
Mm.
She's already there guiding us, that quiet voice that says, say yes, say no, go left, go right, advocate, say something. And we look outside of ourselves for answers and solutions all the time.
Yeah.
So I have a little game that I like to share on this show that I play with the energy of who I am becoming.
Okay.
I know she's there. I know she's 90. I know she's lived an incredible life. And when I get stuck, I actually talk with her.
Nice.
I go into meditation and my prayers, and I can go to sleep with a very simple question like, what is the next step? And I will sleep on that. I wake up in the morning, I'm in the shower, and it just drops into my ether. I know exactly what I need to do to execute. So I love to share this technique with people because we are born with all of the knowings, everything we need to know to live the life that we were gifted.
Mm.
And you have to remember to trust yourself that the Creator put in you every single thing that you need to succeed.
Totally.
So thank you for tuning into Your Wise Woman. Your work is impacting thousands and thousands of people. And although sometimes you feel like it's a drop in the ocean, it isn't. The ripple effect of what you've started, these conversations that you've initiated, is massive.
Mm.
So do not tire. Just keep on going.
Thank you. I needed to hear that today.
Absolutely wonderful. Now, people can get access to your books. I've just put your website at the bottom of the screen.
Yes.
And what other support are you helping people? I know that you're creating a community. What else can people get from you?
Well, I do. Two of my books are free. The PDFs are free on my website. So my first two books are free, and then my third one you can purchase through my website or on Amazon. The other is I just released a TED Talk. It's called "What to Do When You Disagree with Someone You Love." There's a lot of really great pointers in there.
Yes.
A little bit of my story and just how to deal with hard relationships. And there's a lot of great resources on my website kind of pointing to the same thing about how to handle hard relationships, hard conversations, especially with people you disagree with. And on all of my social media platforms, it's the same content that I'm constantly producing is how to have those hard conversations and finding your authentic self. So I have a Substack. I just recently started on TikTok, which I have felt very reserved about, but I'm doing it and it's really been fun. So yeah, and then
Love it.
all of
Absolutely awesome. Well, listen, good luck. Let's stay connected. I would love to re-interview you again, maybe in a year's time. But I do believe we didn't bump into each other by mistake. It's just something magical unfolding with the work that you're doing. And I would love to stay in touch with you with that.
I would love that.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Meagan, thanks again for the interview.
Thank you for having me.
Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.